Thank you. So welcome, everybody, to the January 18th, 2023 meeting of the Finance Board. This is the beginning of our department budget reviews. And so we have a schedule published, and we sit down, we meet with the various departments just to get a little bit of information about what's going on, what their plans are for the year, and what we're looking for. At the time that we meet with all the departments and we have our reviews, we're not making recommendations for budgets at this point. It's the time that we gather all of our information. And then after we've met with everybody, we have further discussions as far as a comprehensive look at the overall budget and the competing wants and needs and wants for the resources that we have, and to provide the best services for our town. So our first meeting tonight is with the town clerk. So why don't we just go right in, and Beth, if you want to just go over your budget package and then talk a little bit about what's been submitted.
Okay, unless you have questions for me, if you want to start it that way, because everybody submitted their budgets to the finance board, so you have our information. So do you have questions for me regarding what I submitted?
I think that for the purposes of the public meeting, it would be helpful to give a summary.
Okay. All right, so for the, all right. So after last year's discussion, and there was quite a bit of lack of correspondence from the Finance Board after the budgets were presented, both by the Finance Board, the town administrators, and the Board of Selectmen. And so the clerk's office felt that there was a lack of respect for the office and what it does. So this year, you are asking everyone to stick to a 2% increase in salary, and I'm asking for a 5%. The assistant, I am asking for an additional 5 hours, which I asked for last year, but it wasn't possible last year. If the additional 5 hours per week isn't a possibility, when I spoke with the town administrator and the accountant, they agreed that we could potentially add 60 hours for the year to the assistant's schedule that she could use on a floating basis based on times of during elections when there's a lot more going on in the office, or during dog registrations or census. So more of a fluctuating additional 60 hours. And I am once again asking for minimum wage for the poll workers, since they still receive $11 per hour and minimum wage is $15. The clerk's office has accomplished quite a bit this year, even with all the mandates. One of the reasons why I feel this year I'm asking for the additional compensation is because of new hires that the town of Groveland had last year. So you hired a planner with no experience for $65,000, a treasurer with no experience for $75,000, and a town administrator with no experience or financial background for $113,000. The town accountant had to go to the town floor to ask for the additional money, which she got, and that's a tough way to do it, but she is just under $90,000. According to the Collins Center, who did the job evaluations and the salaries, they recommended that Groveland compare itself to towns like Merrimack and Rowley, which I did. So Merrimack, the town clerk, has a salary of $67,000, and Rowley, who works only 32 hours, has a salary of $63,000. So if you bump her up to a 37.5-hour week, she's $74,000. Essex is 32 hours at $61,000. If you bump her up to 37.5, she's $72,000. Georgetown is 32 hours, she's $67,000. If you bump her up, she's $78,000. Groveland is $63,000. I did not. This is just my notes for you, since you wanted the extra. Public records requests have increased dramatically. We had 102 last year, and the ethics is changing, And the town clerk is going to be the facilitator for those changes coming up, and it's going to be all municipal offices for the town. So for the expense side on the budget, I went up 8%, which was what was recommended at the Board of Finance meeting that I attended. It was the recommendation of the Finance Board to go up approximately 8% on expenses based on cost of living realities. Education, the increase is moderate for this year's budget to cover 2 people in the office. The postage, which was formerly part of the treasurer's budget, is now going to be broken out per department, so that's a new item on the budget this year for the town clerk. The election expenses is based on 2 elections this year, 1 state and 1 local. On the income side of it, the estimated income in the clerk's office as of the beginning of December was approximately $12,000. I am looking to request an increase to the fees, which would be the business certificates would go from 15 to 25, birth certificates from 10 to 20, death certificates 10 to 20, burial permits 10 to 20, marriage intentions 15 to 20, marriage certificates 10 to 20, yard sales 5 to 10, and raffles 10 to 20. The state talked about offering a reimbursement on some of the costs for early voting, which they did send out an email. I completed the summary, and they broke it into 2 things. They're basing postage on what the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office has for figures on mail-in ballots. And I had to give them the information on the cost for personnel for early voting. So it doesn't have anything to do with all the extra time that the assistant and I put into the office. It's only costs that you actually paid out. So that's for the poll workers for the actual early voting hours. So that's $2,900. And the approximate amount we'll get from postage is about $1,700, so our total reimbursement should be about $4,600. On my goals for the year, I also noted that I would like to have a warrant article to increase the costs for the dog registrations, because that's part of the bylaws, so it would have to be voted at town meeting, and I would like to go from 5 on the spayed and neutered to 10, and then from 10 on the unneutered and unspayed to 20. I would like to drop a fee for seniors altogether for at least if they have 1 dog. If they have multiple dogs, then you could consider a fee. And then I would like to drop the fines altogether, because they just inhibit people from coming in and actually registering their dogs. Other towns have found it works out much better if you don't have fines, but you just collect the fees throughout the year. And if we increase the fees, that will still assist us. So, I think one of the pages I gave you in your docket was the changes between what an election was before the mandated mail-in voting and what it is now. So, as you can see, it went from basically a 3-step process to a 12-step process. And this was courtesies of one of the town clerks, of the town clerk in Danvers. There's been no real changes to the mission of the town clerk's office, but I did make some updates to our goals. And unfortunately, the goals will be moot if we don't have enough hours to work in the office to get anything done. And at this point, the mandates make it very difficult to impossible to move ahead. So, I guess, questions for me?
I do. I'll start. A few things. So, this board never voted to agree to 8% in the supplies budget. We never voted on that.
It was a recommended at the meeting by
Oh.
Bill O'Neill.
Oh.
That
But
the
was it
basic, it was, no, I didn't say it was a vote. I
Okay,
said
I
it
just
was
wanted
a recommendation
Okay, by one person on this board.
by the
Great.
finance
Oh.
board.
It
That
was
based on the
Bill O'Neill,
cost of living expenses, that 8% was a realistic increase.
I made that recommendation
You did.
on salaries?
No.
No, on
expenses.
On
expenses.
expenses. On supplies,
Yes,
paper, toner.
yes.
Yeah, I think that's probably, I mean, Rebecca's paying the bills, right? What are you seeing increases year over year as far as, basic supplies?
It's definitely increasing. We have been trying to compile resources. We recently just redid the conference room, so now we've taken all of everyone's, extra supplies and added them there, because many people have extra envelopes, extra paper, extra cardstock, extra paper clips, and we're trying to utilize our resources more efficiently. So we have made those efforts, but I have seen an increase in the actual cost of supplies, yes.
Yeah, I see it in private industry, so, I see the bills as they come through, and I know they've increased, so I don't know if that's unrealistic, but, I mean, realistically, what's your budget for supplies?
26%
It's lumped
increase.
in as office expenses. Town
But that
clerk's office
includes
expenses.
your postage for now
No,
mail
it
in.
does not.
It does not.
No. Postage falls under election expenses.
It does, okay. So the question, well, election expense, why would you go down?
Because we're gonna have 2 elections next year, not 3.
I agree, and I get that. But the concern I have is, why would you fluctuate it based on that, right? Because then it's gonna, if we really decreased it, say of what it was actually going to cost for 2 elections compared to 3, or, you know what I mean? Then you're having to make that up the following year. For me, that makes no sense. I would rather see it at minimum level funded, especially where it was zeroed out at the end of the year. You used the whole line, so what makes me think that if we go forward, moving forward with the commentary on the 30th, if we have to start doing mail-in for local, and if we do in-person, I mean, you're gonna need you're gonna need room, right? So if we go down, are you gonna spend over again?
No?
You sure? Is it gonna be enough to give back, or is it gonna be exactly enough?
Good question.
That's the concern I have.
Okay, if you want a level fund, that's okay with me. I was trying to be realistic and drop it down because there were 2 elections as opposed to 3.
I'm just saying from my personal opinion.
I will
And the other.
be happy to level fund it.
And the last thing I have is the instructions for this year that the town administrator provided do not come from the finance board, but we did ask, she did ask everyone to do the 2% because we were waiting for the salary study. So I just want to clarify that point, that it was not the finance board specifically. None of us voted on it. We never said it had to be 2%. We just asked that it was 2% because we were waiting for something that we invested in.
Understood. And when I met
Great.
with the town administrator and the accountant, I had 2% in my budget. And when I went through all of the paperwork and took a look at the salaries for everybody in-house, as people have said, if you don't ask for it, you'll never get it. So I'm asking for it.
Right, and I think that the reason we asked for it is because we were waiting for a comprehensive study and not to continue to do outside studies.
So I used the recommended municipalities that the Collins Center suggested in my comparisons. Or 2 of them. 3 of them were not local to the area.
Right.
Anyone have any other questions? I wouldn't mind speaking just for a second about the election expenses. I appreciate what you say, your consideration of the election expenses, Sarah, but I also feel like we should be budgeting for the situation that we're going to be in. And I'm perfectly fine with election expenses being a fluctuating number annually, depending on how many elections are going to occur. That way we don't have other funds tied up that we don't really anticipate using that could be reallocated. I mean, just to give a very quick backdrop, one of the real struggle is that with Proposition 2.5, we can increase our taxes by 2.5% annually. And we know that our expenses, a lot of expenses are going to be beyond that. And so we really do, we sit down, we listen to everybody, we really do try to allocate our scarce resources as equitably, as appropriately as we can make recommendations. We make recommendations, we discuss with the Board of Selectmen, and then it goes to the town meeting. And so, you know, even to speak briefly on the poll workers, I completely hear you that it would be wonderful if we had the resources to pay poll workers minimum wage. And maybe at the end of this budget review session, we will have the funds to do that. One of the issues is that we also have full-time employees who are at the lower end of pay scales. And so it becomes a real balance, a real struggle. Do we pay a poll worker who is really a temporary sort of type of employee versus our dedicated full-time employees who are also at the lower end of the pay scale? So there are valid concerns for all of our employees, and difficult conversations are not fun, but we did fund a comprehensive wage and classification study so that we have a recommendation from an impartial third-party source, a thorough, comprehensive recommendation so that we can really evaluate all of our employees and say, okay, who's the furthest away from the recommendations? How can we get there? And at the same time, we're going to be walking a balancing act of trying to get there within the limited resources that we have. So that's the struggle. I absolutely hear you, and I hear that all of the concerns are valid. And so, again, what we do is we take them in. But, you know, we really do try to be as fair to all of the employees as we can be. So that's just my backdrop on that.
Okay, just to follow up then. If the Commonwealth of Mass demands that you pay $15 as minimum wage to every employee, how does the town hire people for less than $15?
Poll workers are not subject to minimum wage.
By law?
Yes.
Thank you.
Quick question. How much were total election expenses for this past year?
I don't have them in front of me,
Yeah,
but we're over. You only have $200 left, and you still have a town meeting and a local election to run.
so we budgeted 17,681.
No, you
And-
budgeted 8,500. Oh,
Nope.
that was for poll workers, excuse me. That's what you're over on, not election expenses. You're over on poll workers.
Election expenses. And we're gonna be over on that.
You're way over on poll workers, not election expenses. I should be fine on election expenses. It's the poll workers. You didn't budget for 3 elections with mail-in voting and early in-person.
Right, what I'm trying to get at is, what's the average cost per election? And then,
There isn't, it depends, whether it's a state election or a local election, because we pay for more for a state election. I'll get you figures, but I wouldn't quote them off the top of my head.
yeah, and maybe a couple of years' worth of data so we can, kind of look at it and see if there is a pattern with the number of elections per cycle or,
But they have changed dramatically. They're not the same as they used to be because of mail-in and early in-person voting.
Right. That change
Your
is
costs have
huge.
changed dramatically.
That's huge.
it
My-
changes the poll workers' cost, the
It
line
changes the
item.
expense cost. You have to
Expense
mail out
cost.
ballots.
Yeah.
It changes your paper costs. It changes your cartridge cost for your printer. It changes your envelope cost. It changes more than just your poll worker cost. It changes labels, everything that goes into mailing out the ballots, everything that goes into communicating with the voters. The state has also changed because of question 4 on the state ballot that just passed for the licenses. The RMV no longer has an opt-out option for voters to say, I'm already registered, you don't have to notify my town. You now have to be notified for every single person that goes to the registry. I have to send out a letter to every single person that I get updates on. That's gonna be another huge increase in postage, so. So there isn't a real average you can go by from past years.
How many pieces of mail you think that's gonna increase by?
You have 5,400 voters and you have to mail out applications?
If, oh, you have to mail out applications, to all of them.
If it's a state election year, the state mails out the postcards and they handle the cost of those postcards.
Yes.
They mail them out and the voter has the option to sign up for multiple elections, all elections for the year or whichever election they choose for the year. So we don't incur the cost of the mailings for those.
Right.
But on a non-state year, if we choose to send out applications to everyone, we have 5,400, 5,475 as of the end of the year is our registered voter count. So my thoughts were that I would send it out with the census, so that would reduce our costs.
And your plan is you would print the 5,400 letters, envelopes, and mail them?
If we had to. If I can include it with the census this year, then we won't pay the extra. I'll use the state form, but yes, I'll have to print them out. But I can have the vendor that sends out our censuses send out those applications as well. I have the option to send out an additional piece of paper in that mailing. But I'm waiting for the public hearing so that the board votes on whether we will or will not have mail-in voting for the local election. So I've held off on sending out the census.
Basically, you haven't found enough volunteers, huh, for poll workers?
I do have a few new volunteers, yes, but you can't depend on volunteers, not for election day. You have to be able to count on the people, they have to be there.
Any other questions? So, thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Can we get copies of what you were reading off and all these stats and that? That would be helpful. If not, I guess I can just replay it. I can replay it.
No, that's all right, I can put something together, but it had my notes on it, so I can give you just the facts on it.
Yeah, I can replay it.
Yep.
Copy it down and
Okay.
pause it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mind if I move on the other side of the table?
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be fantastic.
That would be good.
Can you hear okay? Can you hear okay over there? Do you want to move? Do you want to sit here? Or do you want to sit at that table? Now you can hear her. Does that sound better?
Holy cow.
Is there too much of a
Yeah.
echo? Chief, how are you? Good. Do you want to come sit where you can, wherever? Wherever the boss tells us to sit. That's what
Microphone
I
right
do.
there.
I just follow directions.
Me too, that's why I'm asking, where do you want me to sit?
We stopped biting a while ago.
How are you? you? Haven't seen you
Good,
in a
I know.
while.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
That's bad.
Good, thanks. Yeah.
You gotta get out there.
Yep. Gotta wait for the
Sure.
winter to go away, though.
Going fast.
So, we introduced, before we met with the town clerk, we just sort of briefly introduced the budget process and reminded everybody, well, this is really the first time, I guess, that we've been recorded, so introduced to whoever may be watching that, when we go through the budget process, we interview all of the departments, we gather information, we don't make recommendations until after we've met with everybody so that we can have a comprehensive review. So, but if you, I know that you submitted your budget package, if you want to just maybe briefly touch upon the highlights of the department and the budget, the goals, and any major changes that may be occurring, or
Sure.
do a little review also for whoever may be watching or referring to the meeting later.
Okay, well, thank you for having me.
Thanks.
As usual, mostly my budget is increased with contractual obligations, and that's what the case is with this. One of the biggest increases is I have 4 officers who are eligible for step raises, contractual step raises, and that in itself equals over 30,000, I think it's 30,800, and that's not counting the education. So that was a big number when you think about trying to keep it at the 2%. That's a benefit to the town, you know, for the first couple of years that they started this actually back in 1994. But when those next year and the next step comes, there is an increase to the budget. So that's why you're seeing that larger number there. And then some of the smaller ones would just be that officers and dispatchers contractually get an extra vacation day after they reach their 5th year. So I try to consider all that, and, you know, giving them that day off, I have to backfill, so I try to
Right.
include that extra amount for that as well. I did increase the training line, or at least I'm asking to put an officer through the full-time academy is a $3,200 invoice to the town. Not that we use that every year, but I'm using it this year, and I would most likely will need it for next year. The officers that we hired last year needs to go to a full-time academy also. And that's money that I really should have been asking for, just to increase our expense line for training, just because training is so expensive. But I do get by, you know, I try to make the numbers work that I have, but that's why that number went up for the training expense.
Is that increasing also, how is the change to reserves?
To the
Full-time
reserves.
affecting, does that affect training?
Yeah, well, there's just more training. I've had to take the reserves that stayed, I had to put them through the Bridge Academy, and we did get some of that money back that I spent, which is nice. But I have one more officer that's got to go to the Bridge Academy, and then I'll be done training the reserves. And again, they're not making reserves anymore. There's no more reserve police academies, so it's going to be all full-time. There's, you know, through fruition, you'll see those part-time officers go away. I did just hire a retired Lawrence police officer who retired, so he came all trained, and that's a nice benefit to the town that has an
Yeah.
interest in. So, you know, you may see some of that along the way, but you can't count on part-time officers like we used to.
Well, that was gonna be my next question. Do they generally stay once you fund their training? Or do
The
you-
ones that I have here are pretty good core reserves, that they're a couple of firefighters, so they're not looking to leave their full-time career, so they want to be here as part-time officers. Another one's a full-time dispatcher, so, you know, he may go transition into full-time police at some point. So, but that, like, training grounds like we used to have is gone, just because they can't come in as a part-timer and then go on to other agencies, so it should be pretty solid as time goes on, and it's working. This having the 2 officers we got last year is really helping, and it's working. With doing well with scheduling. Overtime is contained. You know, if we have the extra help, we don't need to hire more people, so that's been a benefit too.
Have you ever thought of, if they go through the training and we put the cost up front and they leave within a 24-month period, that they would need to, like, I don't even know if we can do that, if they would have to like reimburse that. I just know like my company does, right? So if I go to back to school, they'll pay a certain percentage up to it or, pay the full amount. But if I leave within 24 months, I have to reimburse them.
That is something, yes, we could do.
It was something to think, I know, Ruth, what you're bringing up, are they staying, right? I mean, there's kind of incentive to stay for at least 2 years, right? Because they're not gonna wanna have to pay it back, not that it's a lot of money, but
No,
it's still money.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea, and I did consider it this last time, but the officer that's going had been with us for a little while as a part-timer.
Sure.
So I felt pretty.
Confident.
He's pretty solid, and I felt confident, yeah, that,
Yeah.
but that's definitely something that I should think about, just so the town doesn't make that investment and then they leave, so.
Right. Because someone could come and say, that's great, I'll go there and do that and then leave,
But they,
Not that it happens. It
no,
hasn't.
I think it does, no, I think you're onto something there, but
Yeah.
again, this individual officer, he also had a chance to go civil service to a full-time city job, and he wanted to stay here in Groveland, so I'm pretty confident
Perfect.
he's solid for the town,
Sure.
yeah. I asked for $500 more in an expense to add another mobile data terminal to one of the cruises, only because we have 5 cruises and we only have 4 mobile data terminals, so the officers are concerned because they're moving this computer from one car to the other, and it's starting to break in the connections
I
that they
was
keep
just gonna
plugging
say,
in.
that must be like wear and
So,
tear. on
yeah,
that.
it's been a problem, and I just think it makes sense for that, I know it's $500, but for that small amount of money otherwise, to have a cruiser fully equipped that when one's down, that they can get in and it's ready to go, and that's just a basic piece of equipment now.
Yeah.
Years ago, that was really a big deal to have a computer in a cruiser, but now it's just like having a steering wheel in a car, as far as a cruiser goes.
Or cell phone in your back pocket.
It's nice to know, the person you just pulled over is a good guy or a bad guy before you
Yep.
get out of the car.
And that's what they do, they're running the plates when they can.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good point.
Good safety.
Yeah.
How are those vehicles running? I mean, maintenance-wise,
They're good. They're still lasting about the 5 years, and the one, we just got our new car today, and the one that you'll see over there that's been stripped, that was just starting to have transmission issues, so I think just in time. So,
How many miles an hour?
Probably 120, 130. And again, as we always talk, it's not so much the miles that are on the car, it's the running miles.
It's the running
When you
time.
think that car, the hours on it. But I think we've really got that defined. We get to the point that there's really no value to those cars, very little value anyways. I know the shop that did the work just offered me $1,500 for it, which is really not a lot of money. But instead, I talked to Rebecca, and we're gonna auction it off, and maybe we can get a little bit more money. But that's working. The 5-year plan is really working to, not put money into the car.
And that hasn't changed with the new officers, the 2 officers that you added last year, the rotations.
Well, I haven't had.
'Cause it
Hasn't been time tested yet. I'm still trying to restrict the miles that the officers do just because of wear and tear and fuel cost. And that, when there is that third officer, it's like the sergeant's finally able to do, like he does pistol permits, and he's in the station, so I'm trying not to just add extra miles to the cars, but I suppose as time goes on, you might see that, but I think we're okay. The cars are working out well, though, I think it's a good investment.
Well, I remember we changed over a few years back from the, what was the Chrysler?
Charger, yeah.
Chargers.
Yeah, we had a lot.
Because they were just maintenance,
Jim
throwing-
hated the Chargers.
Well, the maintenance costs were just unreal.
Well, and the one before this, the Fords, like I said, I think they're doing well, but the last one, we got rid of, Rennie has it now, but only because I had to put a new engine in that. It blew just before, like a year before it was time to get rid of it.
Huh.
So Rennie took it, got it all fixed up, and then like the transfer case or something went in it before he can even really drive it. So again, that's just, I try to bring up those examples to show you that we really do push them right to the limit. It stopped just before you have to start dumping a lot of money into it. I certainly didn't like spending money to rebuild the motor, but I had to just to get through that next year, and now it was a benefit that it gave Rennie, a pretty decent car to drive.
Yeah,
So,
How are they on gas? Or are you getting hybrids now?
I'm getting hybrids now, yeah, so they're getting up to like 24 miles to the gallon. The one I drive, it's like 24.4 miles to the gallon, which is pretty good for an all-wheel drive SUV.
Especially if they're sitting
And, yeah,
idling,
right, because they're not running all the time,
right?
yeah.
Not
So,
bad.
yeah,
Now, is there any God forbid, is there any talk about going EV?
I looked into the Mustang, I know Topsfield got one, and the reason I hesitated was because they're not like police rated, it's still more like a civilian model, and I think you want to see a little more time before you start using that for patrol.
Yeah, I'd like to see it in an SUV at least.
Yeah.
Four-wheel drive.
And it's definitely going in that direction, and I know the light department just got a truck, and you're probably gonna see that in the future, so, I looked into it, and I went and checked one out, and it just wasn't police rated, so just even the interior and the wear and tear would probably break down quicker with the officers with the gun belts and getting in and out of it a lot, and I just didn't think it'd be a good time to test that.
Are there any incentives out there to kind of
I hear there are, yeah.
move that way?
Yeah, because you need the charging station and things like that, so the hybrid, I think, is a good first step. But yeah, that's something to think about for the future, too.
I think that's the way it's going, whether we like it or not. But,
Yeah.
if there's grants or government funding to subsidize, a good portion of that,
Yeah.
maybe it's a good time to,
The newest wave was the hybrids, and that happens in some of even the bigger cities have tried those, and I tried it, what, 3 or 4 years ago.
with good
So I'm-
success.
And I'm sticking with them, yeah. Again, it's just saving some money, I think. You
Yeah.
pay a little more, but I think it's working.
Well, you get it back over the long run, because now you're not down to 18 miles to the gallon
Yeah.
with the fuel costs as they are, then you really,
Yep.
Can you touch on the jail diversion program? Because that sounds very
Did they start yet?
interesting to me.
It's very interesting, but they're interviewing 3 candidates next week. Again, there's gonna be a lieutenant will go. They hired one, we did, and it didn't work out. They did some background, and it wasn't the right person, so we had to start all over again, so.
It's tough.
I'm very excited and anxious for that, and,
Yeah.
so the grant money is there, we're just looking for the right person. So there's 3 candidates that will be interviewed next week. That should have already been in place, and it just didn't,
Yeah.
person came and left, so,
Well, it's a topic, mental health's a topic that you've brought up
yeah. it's
several
a big-
times, the
big,
last
big,
several meetings.
concern of mine and the departments. We spend a lot of time on dealing with that type of call.
Yeah.
And this is gonna be a great opportunity to give something back to people that really need help, rather than just that Band-Aid that we put on.
Yeah.
But we're still working like with the Pettingill House, and there's another one through the, Haverhill Housing has another resource for us, so we have found resources, but this here is gonna bring a clinician to Groveland, 1 day a week, which is gonna be great, and there'll be a call-out. If we need assistance in an emergency, they might be able to come to our community, so. And they're gonna pay 4 hours of overtime each week for an officer to go with that clinician or help with follow-up, so it's not gonna cost us anything, and it's just
That's,
a great opportunity. There's so many people that need that
I know.
assistance beyond what we can offer. And what we do, I think, is incredible. The officers spend a lot of time, and the patience and the caring that they show, but it's almost overwhelming for us at times, because we become the place where everybody wants to come. We're a captive audience, and they can get that attention, but it's not really the right attention they need, I don't think, so. Having a real professional, we're not professionals in that area, so, yeah.
that's great,
Yeah, thank you.
that's great.
The grant to fund that, does that have, is it something you're gonna have to like apply for every year?
I think it's like,
Or is there a time period?
there's a
that-
time period, yeah, and actually Raleigh's the one that kicked it off, and sometimes when you do things with a bigger group, the towns around, that's how we got on board with it, so we're all sharing those resources. So I'm sure we'll revisit it again, and it'll be a chance to see how it works out for us, yeah.
I love that the DARE program is still going. How long
Their
ago did
program,
we
you got my
start that?
ear, and you and I were talking a few years ago, and I'm like, that's in my sights, and it was one of the first things I did when I got the chief's job, and it's actively going right now. We just expanded it to 12 weeks. There's another segment on vaping, so we're adding that to the curriculum. And Josh Sindoni's just doing a fabulous job.
Isn't he awesome with the
Yeah,
kids?
He really is, and I have the officers go every day, and some of them have lunch with the kids, but they have to walk through once or twice a day, and they're giving us an office space down there, just like a little annex, just so we're in the building. And I do cover that within my budget, which I'm proud of, because without me handling it, I don't think the town could afford can I, come to you and say, I need more overtime, I need extra money. So we're making it work. And again, with that third officer on the 3 to 11s, rather than pay the officer overtime, he might just adjust his hours and work 9 to 5 that day. So I'm making it work, and I think it's been really well received. And again, I tell you, it's not like the old DARE program, just say no to drugs. It's a lot about peer support and just feeling good about talking to people and yourself and understanding a lot of what kids are dealing with today. It's not just a drug thing. So that's going really well, and
That's great.
it's actively going on. As I said, right now, we're in doing the program.
Awesome,
Okay.
wonderful.
You're gonna start seeing the benefits of that program any day now, because if I'm not mistaken, we've been having that. When I first got on the Board of Selectmen, I went to you, approached you with that.
Yep,
So
I
we're going on
remember that.
7 years.
Yeah.
So these kids are now high school, a little bit beyond, some of the kids at the first, gonna start seeing the benefits of that pretty soon.
Yeah.
That the kids are doing much better.
I really believe in that, and, we're still working close with the schools. I have a training table exercise with the schools next week for school safety. We met last month. We're still talking about our drills and just even training amongst the administrators, and so there's time, being put into that. And even the officer, Sergeant Sindoni, I keep him certified as a certified SRO. Even though Groveland in-house doesn't have one, he's full-time, fully certified to be a school resource officer, which is a benefit just for those complicated cases that we have between the school and the police and what you can do and can't do. And you gotta be really careful how you handle young people, and privacy and just some of the issues they have. So Josh really knows his stuff, and he's staying up on those trainings. So I cover that. So, when you see some of the training that I do, that's what he's doing too, so.
And those first impressions, with the police, that's so important, that it's a good, positive experience for these young kids, so they grow up and understand that you guys are friends and not the enemies. That they can come to you with problems and not run away. In establishing those relationships early on, again, we're all gonna benefit from that in the long
Yeah,
run.
I believe that too. So I think it's worth the investment and the time to do what you can for kids at that age. And again, the other officers, they'll go in, the teacher will tell the officer that once they sit at that table today, the kids are a little rambunctious, and he'll sit and he calms them down and talks to them, so it's pretty good. I think it's going well.
And the presence at the community events that,
Yeah.
we see you at too, I think that's where also there's that overlap. You see the kids get excited,
Yeah. And
When
when they
I was a
know 'em,
kid, the
yeah.
uniform was intimidating, and so you can see the connection. On the note of the schools, I'm just curious, why do we see cruisers following the school bus from time to time?
That was an idea I came up with. It was an idea that I stole from another community. I read an article on it, and I call it bus shadowing, and it's just random, you won't see it all the time. It's just, we get calls of people passing the school bus, so I thought if they see a cruiser now and then behind the school bus, they're not gonna know when to expect it, and every so often we might even have an unmarked. And we've caught a couple people, and once people knew, at first some people were nervous or intimidated by it, but once they realize that it's there for a good reason,
Yeah,
and that seems to be successful too, that people do like it now that they understand it. I think at first they would wonder, why is there a cruiser always behind the school bus? And I did do an article about it, you get it out just to tell everybody, but not everybody, I don't think, sees it. So I told them they don't have to do it every day, but just randomly do it.
yeah.
And just get the word out, because we were getting those calls. People will pass a school bus, believe it or not. I mean, it happens. It's unbelievable.
Was
We
there
had
an
one that
inc-
was pulling up, I'm sorry.
Oh, they jumped off the curb, right? Just,
That was Melissa's
yeah.
child.
Yeah. Oh, that was you? That was, oh, wow.
Her husband is the
Yeah.
one that pulled the
Oh, yeah.
child right out of the
It's a whole
way.
nother-
and-
Yeah. No, we had one that was pulling up on the left side of the bus while the lights were going, and thought, they didn't really pass it. They're on the wrong side of the road, and the lights are red, and then when the lights would shut off, they'd zoom in front of them.
Oh, so they didn't want to stop at the next stop?
Yeah.
Oh, ingenious.
So, but knowing there's a cruiser around, I think helps.
I was just curious. I see
Yeah.
them from time to time, and I've always wondered, because you're right, there is no pattern, there is no regularity, and so,
No, and I don't know if I did it twice, I put that out because people were wondering why, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking, it's supposed to be a good thing. If it's making people uncomfortable, I have to stop doing it, but I wanted to give it a chance, and it seems to have worked out well.
I think people are only uncomfortable if they have a
Yeah.
reason to be.
Yeah,
They've been one of the passers.
So I think,
yeah, yeah.
I was just
Everybody else is
curious.
fine
I
with it.
see it
Laura
often.
Binding said,
Yeah.
we're not
Well,
comfortable."
right, and if they ever did do that and they did get stopped, they'd think twice, or if they saw a police vehicle, they'd be like, oh, I better not pass as a bus. I mean, you know, it's sad we have to do it, but it's
Yeah.
good that you are.
No, it's a good public relations thing, too, to show that extra effort, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think-
I wonder how the kids like it. Hey, getting followed by Officer so-and-so today.
I bet they behave better on the bus.
Yeah.
We had a second hit and run at the bus stop.
Oh, my goodness.
2 cars. One guy hit a car and then took off as soon as the bus lights went off. So he got chased into Rowley, and I
Yeah.
don't know what happened after that, but
Yeah,
it's amazing how people don't pay attention.
yeah. Well, they're just in a rush, you know, and they don't want to get stuck
They
behind the
don't
school
wanna,
bus.
they don't wanna wait.
Yeah. You gotta
Well,
wait.
They're on their phone.
Yeah.
Do you want to touch on the accreditation?
Yeah, I'd love to. That's another great thing. I've been wanting that for years. I got our department certified years and years ago, and then as the chiefs come in, it didn't get continued. And that's just a great public relations thing also, to show that we're keeping up with the standards and we're held accountable to, you know, the standards that we should be. It's a lot of liability, a lot of policy and procedures on how we're supposed to do our job. And so we got certified, and then we just had the assessors come in for the accreditation, which is the next step. And we're just waiting to hear about our award. You know, there's things they make you fix. You have to tweak certain things in your policy and procedures, and even structurally in the building, how the cruisers are set up, and just a lot of safety things, but that's going really well, so I think we're gonna get it. I feel really good about that.
That's great.
That just helps with liability for the town.
Yeah, yeah. And it gives you a standard to follow.
That we have
at
to
the same
follow,
time,
which we
yeah.
should, right? I mean, it shouldn't be different in Groveland than it is in any other community. If you have to deal with, I call them a customer, they should be treated the same, and they should be afforded all the same rights, and they certainly are, but this just holds us accountable, that you have to do things a certain way, so it's a good award.
Great. Lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
Does
I don't know if
anybody
there's
have?
anything else on the budget. Like I said, there was just those couple things, the wish list, you know, a couple, like I said, the computer, and I did ask for a little money to add into the communications. The supervisors get a small stipend, $640 a year for cell phones, but the two detectives who are also on call, who have to have a phone, and they have to, rather than me pay for their phone, I was giving the others a stipend, so I'd like to see that for them, just to, it's hard to hold them accountable that they have to answer the phone and be on call, and, you know, without giving them a phone or whatever, but I know everybody has a phone today, so go ahead, keep your phone, and we'll give you something for it. That was another request that I had. But if you look at, otherwise, I tried to, you know, knowing there was those couple of extras, and I think I've kind of been time-tested too with my experience with this committee and just the town, that if there's money I don't need, I don't just spend it, I give it back, and I've done that every year. But I'd like to have, I don't want to just call it a buffer, but when you're running an operation like this, like, say, dispatch, I need somebody to sit there all the time, and things happen, whether somebody had a baby, somebody was out sick, so I need that money there to make sure I can fill those open shifts. And if I don't have to, then the money comes back.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to tie it up, but I know that I couldn't come to you halfway through the budget season and say, somebody's out sick for 3 months, and I need money, I don't know where it would come from. So this is work too, that just to have that money for, in anticipation of any, hopefully, unexpected events. And that keeps the operation running, and it has. It's been uninterrupted service to the community, really, you know, from the police, because of the support from this committee and basically the town to give us the basics, you know. And I don't feel like I have tons of money, but I feel like we're okay to keep things running, and we're doing good with equipment, and I've been picking away at things rather than try to come up with tons of money for tasers. I buy a couple at a time when I have that money. And we're doing okay with that. We're gonna get new firearms, they've been ordered, but again, I'm not coming to the town for that money, because that's thousands of dollars. I'm taking that money from, we do a gun safety course, and we charge the money, that goes back into a fund, and then I use that money for those type of events, so that's coming, and I'm not asking for any
Gun
money.
safety course, you mean to residents or?
Anybody can come and take that
Anybody.
gun
And
safety
there's a fee
course.
for that,
It's
and then-
$100. So I pay the officer that does the training out of that account, and then as it builds up, I can use it for, buy guns, or if we run out of ammo or things like that, so that's proven to be pretty successful, so. Trying to get creative, just not to, to add to that.
I give you credit. You've always been creative and very conscientious, and also bringing great programs like you covered and
Yeah.
referred to. So,
Thank you.
I mean,
I will have to say, it's been an honor working with the chief. He really goes above and beyond. He communicates just about everything. We talk mostly, almost every other day, if not every day, on items that are going on and what's happening in town. And it's been really nice to collaborate on many initiatives in terms of sharing resources, expanding our capacity. It's been great working with Lieutenant Riley, Sergeant Petroni on the number of grants that they've been able to bring into Groveland. And it really is very helpful, to me at least, to know that the chief is there and supports the town and is doing such a great job with him and his team. So I have to commend him on that, because it's not every day that somebody's like, all right, listen, I don't know I don't know if I'm gonna have enough money, but I think, and he's willing to talk out those issues, and they're not easy issues to talk about, so I have to commend the chief on that.
Thank you,
He's always been
appreciate
great.
that. Thank you, and that's a good point. I do have, like, Sergeant Patron is doing the grants for extra patrols, like Lieutenant Riley's doing the 911 grants. Sergeant Sindoni just got the grant for our ballistic vest. I'm trying to come up with some money out of that gun safety course for that too, because they're not covering it completely, but probably 90% of the cost to outfit the officers with that vest is covered through state and federal grants, so that's nice too, so. Again, those extra things that come up every 5 years, it's like, where do you come up with that money? So if you
Yeah,
can
no,
think outside the
that-
box or take advantage of grants, that's helping.
and anticipate it.
Yeah, know what's coming and get ready for it, so that's working. But to wrap up, I don't want to hold you guys up.
No, we
I
have
did-
till.
I did like keep the vehicle maintenance level funded. Clothing allowance, which would be level funded, that's a contractual. My expense line, I kept that level funded. Association fees was kept level funded. And fuel, I only put 1.6. I met with Rebecca and Ellen, and we just said maybe add a little bit. The fuel price is like the stock market. I don't know what to think, so I just added just a little bit. Again, that's a number of money that will come back to the town if gas prices drop. I'm not gonna start driving around in circles extra to use the gas, so.
Can you just touch on, you noted a new contractual career award program, just what that is?
Yeah, so the last contract that the officers negotiated with the town, they came up with a career award. So, you might have to help me, Rebecca, it's 10 years, they get $600. Somebody that's been here 10 years gets $600, and then it goes up to 15 years. I believe it goes up to $800 maybe. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me.
No, that's okay.
But that's about
Just-
what it
okay.
is.
It also helps
So-
with retention.
That was another, I didn't have a line item for that, that wasn't prepared for that. So I took that money this year, because it was mid-year, so I took it out of the overtime, hopefully that will be okay, because I had to pay them 2 officers, I should say. So that's why I put it in, I talked with Rebecca, and it's probably best to show you all, where is that money
Would
coming
agree.
from, and why is it there? So good question, I should have hit on that. Otherwise, everything's, again, straightforward. I know I always try to be respectful to the restraints, and I was concerned when I saw the number for the salaries, but that's just a negotiable item, and although it's a bigger number now, I try to look at it that it saved the town money for those first couple of years because they were paid a much lower rate. And I do have the numbers if you wanted to know what they're going up to.
I think it's all in there. I saw
Okay.
it. And, I mean, if it's in the contract, it's in the contract.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're obligated at that point.
Yeah, and you'll see that if you look at step 1, 2, and 3, excuse me, you'll see how that adds up. And this, again, there's 4 officers. 3 are going from step 1 to step 2, and 1 officer going from step 2 to step 3. So once they level out and we stop hiring, which I have no plans of hiring, you'll just be more of a level funded, or the 2%, whatever you all agree on.
Steps mean that they've stayed, too,
Yeah,
which
Yeah.
is a positive thing.
yeah, it's good to, again, it was a savings for the town back years ago, just to get a new officer in, you try to get used to it and adapt to it.
Speaking of the contract, it should be noted, too, that during the pandemic, the officers' union was willing to negotiate that 1-year contract with the town, because they knew we were, in a tight way, and that was really appreciative of
Well, thank you.
what
You
they
know,
did there.
they're a good group. They signed up to do their job, and that's really their focus. Of course, they want to work out a good contract, but during that time, they were just wanted to keep doing their job, and the same with the dispatchers. They did that extension too, and just to carry on, and it wasn't time to focus on contracts at that time, but-
Yeah, I think that the image of public service really stood out as opposed to self-service with those guys at that time.
Thank you, Bill.
I have one question, and I gotta ask it because I just had an oil change, and I almost fell over. The price just, is skyrocketed, so you really think level funding that vehicle maintenance, because it's gotta include your oil changes, right, is
Yeah.
realistic?
Well, you're going to think this is my money. I know it's not, but.
I love the fact that you treat it like it's your money, because
I'm gonna-
most people don't.
I'm going to tell you what I did to get around that. I was shocked when I found out it went from $40, I think, to $60 for an oil change. That's not right. So it's because of the new engines. They have to use the synthetic.
The
So
synthetic.
It goes from 40 to 60. I'm like, I didn't have that budget, and we have to do, because of the running, and they have to get changed all the time. But with a new engine and the synthetic oil, instead of going every, 3,000, we're going like every 5 or 6,000. And you're allowed to do that. So I am paying more, but I'm changing the oil less. So,
Stretching the buck.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
I just.
I didn't know that was coming. The surprises in the middle of a budget season are difficult, and I think I added in here too, I didn't mention the increase for our computer system that runs our whole department. That annual fee went up, I think it was like a few $100s, and it was after the fiscal year started, so I'm trying to, now I can be prepared for next year, but I
The
don't know
older
why.
that technology gets, though, here's the problem with technology. The older it gets, the more it costs to support it.
yeah.
And that technology, I think now is about 5, 6 years old when we put in that new data
Yeah.
system. So that's about the time, the lifespan of technology where they say, okay, we've moved on to a new platform that we're moving all our resources to. If you still want us to support that platform, this is what it costs. Unless you want to move to this new platform, which we'll happily install for you at this price. You know how it works.
Well, I learned the hard way too, just because it was the software updates that you needed. That's really, really expensive. And, that's kind of a learning curve for me too, that we were having trouble, things were crashing. It's like, we need that. And I said, why didn't you tell me? But I guess I should take the blame because I didn't ask, but we're good right now, so.
Yeah.
But everything's going up. It's unbelievable, the price of the increase. And again, I'm going to do my best just to maintain the same amount of service that we provide and to stay within the restraints. And in a perfect world, we'd all have more, but I think we're doing okay, the town as a whole.
No, the service you provide is outstanding as far as I can see.
Appreciate it. Great, Thank
I
you.
love coming here. You guys are awesome.
Well,
We love having you.
listen, it's a very easy conversation when
Yeah, I just-
the other party is so willing to compromise, as opposed to being so dug into their spot that they're immovable.
Yeah. No, I know that you have to be flexible, and there's a lot of moving parts, and I learned that long ago, and all those line items are there for a reason, so you can see where the money's going, and maybe you can move it from here to there if you have to, or if you don't need it, you have to give some back, so. So it's working.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming
Wonderful.
in.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a good night. If that's your coat going, we'll take it.
Yeah, please, no. I'll be cold when I leave here.
So our next meeting is for 6 o'clock.
We should probably introduce Alex. I don't think he's.
Sorry, I was
I know.
thinking that afterwards, that I should have made full introductions. I will with our next person. That was the chief of police, Alex.
I think I figured it out.
You did,
Yeah.
police chief.
Normally, we go down and we
People were
introduce
like,
everybody.
I was like, oh,
And I
okay.
should have done that. My
I think
apologies.
I might be the police chief.
You sure you're still comfortable there, Janet?
I sit somewhere else.
Want to pull up the rocking chair for you? Okay, just let me know.
Wherever you would like. Who are you?
Good, how are you guys?
Good, thank you. Do you know everybody here except for Alex? You haven't
I
met
think we met
Alex?
before.
You've
We
met
Alex.
before, yeah.
Oh, you came to another one of our meetings, and so Alex is the newest member of our group,
Welcome.
who was not here for budget hearings last year. Everybody else was, not last year, but has been before. So, and Annie is, you can introduce yourself?
Sure.
and Go over just maybe a little bit about your budget package, highlights, goals, and what you're looking for, any changes, substantial changes that we need to talk about. When when we meet with everybody, we review budgets, we don't make recommendations tonight, we meet with all of the departments, and then we have discussions of the budget as a whole.
Awesome, sounds good. So, oh, that echo is really scary.
Oh, he's adjusting it a little bit.
So hi again, Annie Schindler. I'm the Town Planner Environmental Program Coordinator, which means I work within the Economic Development Planning and Conservation Department. Do a lot of different things within that, but kind of the main staples are working with the Planning Board, Zoning Board, and Conservation Commission, and also assisting with a lot of the grants we have going on in town with Rebecca, our town administrator. As far as the budget goes for this year, pretty straightforward. Not a ton of changes. I'll kind of start off with like what's really not changing. Basically, as far as the town planner salary as well as my administrative assistant salary, just the 2% raise. We split up in ClearGov the Conservation Commission budget and the kind of rest of the department's budget, as Mike Dempsey, the Conservation Commission chairman, is handling the Conservation Commission budget. So you guys have a meeting scheduled with him later, so he'll be touching upon all of that. And I think when we split that up, Rebecca, the stipend got stuck in conservation. So I will touch base with Mike and we will talk about that later, but it is within my budget, but just so what you're looking at is consistent. I can just talk with Mike about that and I can come to that meeting as well to go over it more fully unless you want me to talk about it now. But, salary line items, just that 2% raise, and then the only other raise is a 2.5% raise with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission assessment, which is the max they can go up every year, and I could go on for hours about how valuable they are to the town and how much they help us with so many things. Which brings me to not a change for this year, but it will be a change for next year, and that's on the second page. The department will be making a request for $1,202.20 for contracted services with MVPC for Eagle View Pictometry. So this is something that my department, I use it multiple times a day, every day. Sam with the inspectional services uses it often, and Julie with the assessors uses it somewhat frequently as well. It is.
For what?
So, a large part of my department's, I guess, role is looking at the town from the sky to evaluate, the way our land is being used, whether that's for planning and looking at, potentially developable parcels, or for conservation, looking at where wetlands are in relation to construction projects or open space, and, you know, trying to make connections between different open space parcels. So we use, it's called MyMap. We use that to help us visualize the town from above. And while MyMap has kind of a base layer that's just like a solid color with like pink buildings on it, something that I find really valuable is being able to actually see what those buildings are, see where there are pools, see where there are sidewalks, and kind of just see the layout of the land. I know Sam Jocelyn uses it often for, I don't want to necessarily say enforcement, but, you know, if someone puts a shed within their setback, like their side lawn setback, if it's been there for longer than 10 years, it kind of gets grandfathered in, right? And so through this pictometry, he can kind of create like a history of where things are on people's property. So he uses it for that. He also uses it in the same way I do. He's the zoning enforcement officer as well, so we work together a lot on different zoning changes. So it helps us a lot to just visualize the town. So that is what that request will be for next year. It's a 6-year contract. We, last year, had a warrant article for the first 2 years, so they do 3 flights, and we're splitting it up moving forward for this $1,202.20. We're splitting it up each year, but it is 3 flights, so we've paid for 1 already through the warrant last year, and this will cover next year. It will eventually cover the other 2 flights split up. It's something that, I mean, because it's an every other year expense, and it's not an every year expense, it's something I wanted to make sure I got in this so it didn't fall behind. So it's kind of one of those, put your sticky notes everywhere so you don't forget it, type thing. So that's really, not a change for this year, but for next year. And then as far as goals, for the department, continuing to, you know, utilize E-code for our zoning bylaws, our stormwater bylaws, our wetland bylaws, and our subdivision rules and regulations. Sam and I are always in the works, trying to improve those and make them more clear for ourselves, working with them, and also residents reading them and utilizing them. With E-code, it comes with an annual cost that the department pays for, and then anytime we update it, it comes with a cost as well. So that's one of the things my expense line item pays for. Another thing that it will pay for in this upcoming fiscal year is our contribution to the MVPC for our housing production plan. That is expiring soon, and so it's going to be a regional plan with a chapter on Groveland, so we will be going through that process soon, so it goes towards that. And also just as grants come up that require matching funds, it will help to cover things like that as well. Yeah, I think that more or less covers it. Not many changes as a whole, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to elaborate further.
Is the bike path open yet? 'Cause I've seen a lot of happy people enjoying it.
Yes, there are a lot of happy people enjoying it, which is awesome. I know one of the things we're still waiting on is, like, if you look at the Main Street entrance near SC Park in the School Street intersection, there's like those big granite posts, and there are going to be kiosks with visuals that are going to go on those. So that's, I know, one thing we're still waiting on, and I believe maybe a couple other things, like really small punch item things, but for the most part, it's almost there.
I just can't see you and not discuss
It's very exciting.
the awesome rail trail. So we're gonna cover all of this conservation another time.
Yes, yeah. Mike will be here to go through that with.
Yeah, we do conservation and we do CPA together. And we probably need to address that, because we need a probably a finance board member on the community preservation. Well, I would think it would be an annual revisit and renewal. So if he still wants to, we would have to talk about it. So, okay. Any other questions for Annie?
I've got one.
Yeah.
You've got two expense lines. What do your expenses consist of?
Sure. Are you looking at the one that's under the zoning board? Because that's zeroed out.
I'm looking at, let me see, the Conservation Committee, there's 3366, and,
Then the 7,000.
yes.
Yep, so that's gonna be under, when Mike comes in to talk more about, specifically about the Conservation Commission, but I'm happy to touch on some of the stuff that, we utilize that money for. A good example this year, well, first of all, for, education, I, completed my Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissioners, certification, so that money went towards me continuing my education. That's one of the things that money gets used for. Another thing is kind of things as they come up. So for example, this year, Meadow Pond Reservation off of Uptack Road, we were having issues with people hunting too close to people's houses. So I, with that money, purchased some equipment for myself to help to make it easier for me to put up safety zone hunting signs. So I bought a rangefinder. I also, with that money, bought like grabbers to help clean up Lower Center Street for litter as well. Also, another thing that money gets used for is signage for the trails throughout town. So I know that the 150 Center Street or Strawberry Fields, we're looking to investigate using those funds to create some better signage back there and add some mapping. And then other, Conservation Commission expenses, so mailings that we have to send out.
I was just gonna say, office expenses
Yeah.
must be.
Yeah, we do. We have to send certified return receipts to the DEP and also applicants unless they come and pick up their permits. So again, that's for the $7,000 with the planning and zoning. I have to send things out for that as well. And then also anytime we have to post something in the newspaper, the money goes towards that as well. Newspaper's very expensive. Yeah. Shocking.
Like, unreasonable. Like, I think like 6 lines is like $600.
It's really expensive.
When's the last time you bought a newspaper?
My mother gets one delivered every day. Actually, they only deliver 5 days a week, and so, yeah. And
I know.
and the last time I posted something was 4 months ago. Anything else?
The readership is just down that, they're forced to.
You know what's
Yeah,
funny?
they have to
I
make it up.
like some
They have to
physical
make it up in
paper
other
in my hand. I
places.
like, physical budget books. I like physical books.
I'm
a
with
physical
you.
touch kind
I'm
of person.
physical too. I like the touchy
You
feely,
know.
That's the generation I grew up into.
Yeah, I like to flip the pages.
My fingers. So
Okay, I don't do
next
that.
time, we should shrink the columns a little bit. Yeah, it's hard to see, isn't it?
And mine's not much better.
Great, I think this is straightforward, I think it's wonderful, I think that,
I would just like to add, despite negative commentary earlier, that Annie has been an outstanding employee and has risen to the occasion of being the town planner, as well as the environmental program coordinator, given the year of transition. She is highly educated, she is enthusiastic, and she is, just like the chief, willing to come up with creative solutions and work with other departments in order to ensure that we have the resources and that our residents are being protected from development, as well as environmental impacts, et cetera. And I just think that it should definitely be noted that she is an outstanding employee, and that should not be belittled in any way, shape, or form.
I'm sorry I made that negative comment.
No, you didn't.
Huh?
You didn't. It wasn't you. But thanks
Sure-
for
sure I didn't.
apologizing.
you must have a guilty conscience.
I
Well,
know.
one time.
Maybe we should talk about that.
One time, the words sugar plum iced tea slipped out of my, between my lips. And
I would have remembered if that was directed towards me.
I think the only
and
thing,
then, well, for me after that, let's just say that.
The only thing I would say, Annie,
Yes.
is where you did go back and you went and got a certification, next time put it in here.
I know.
It's nice. It's nice that you know, for people to know that those are things you did.
I should have, it's very
It's important.
busy. I also do, CPTC, citizen planning training, collaborative commission, one of those. I do courses through them as well for, planning and zoning, continuous education. Something's just slipping my mind these days with how much is going on. So continuous ed, I'm always looking for anything that I can kind of get my hands on to make sure I'm up to date with everything going on.
Yeah, she's humble.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rebecca, for noting all of that. I completely agree. I've worked with Annie in various capacities over the year, through the finance board, through just being a resident of the town, and I will say, definitely super knowledgeable and enthusiastic, and I really appreciate all of that. Our residents really benefit from the role and from you specifically, so thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And thank you, Rebecca, as well.
Good?
Yeah.
We'll see you on the Conservation Day.
Woo. And you'll
So-
see me around, I'm everywhere.
Thank you.
No problem, have a great night, guys.
You too. Thanks for coming in.
Of course, happy to.
So our next meeting is not scheduled until 6:30 with the Board of Assessors.
Does want me to tell to wait until 6:30 or do you want
It's up to her.
I know she wanted to get home. She lives at PB, so.
Yep, yep, sure. That's the other reason that we bumped the meetings back to 5 o'clock during budget season, because we have people to meet with. The meetings can be a little bit longer accordingly, but also so that employees who stayed after work can, you know, we can sort of get the meeting started and.
Oh, that's next week. Oh, nuts.
Hello.
I said it this fast. It's past my bedtime anyways. It doesn't matter at this point. Hi, everybody.
You're not gonna begin to sundown on us, are you?
That's
You
questionable.
got enough of that going on.
What
I'm
time
here
is
to bore you.
bedtime?
That's usually 7.
Really?
Yeah. We clean up from
What
dinner.
time does the alarm clock go off then?
About 6.
Ah,
Yeah.
Good for you.
I don't fall asleep at 7, but I do
Alright.
like to be in the bed by 7.
Okay, we'll get to business. Do you know everybody here?
I do know everybody. I think the only person I haven't met is it
Alex.
Alex.
Yeah.
Hi, Alex. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
I'm Julie.
Julie is in our Board of Assessors office, and Alex is obviously the newest member of the Finance Board.
Welcome.
And so, you've met with us before?
I have.
It's almost bedtime, so let's just get right into it. You can just give us a little bit of a
Those are a couple hard acts to follow. I'm going to bore you guys to death
a
right now.
review
so.
of what's been going on, and a review of the budget, and
So, you want me to touch on the budget first? I mean, it's pretty, actually,
why
I'll
don't
just-
you give
I'll
us a
read-
little bit of your memo, what's been
Okay.
going on and what's been going on this year, maybe some plans for next year.
So, I'll just read from my letter. We continue to maintain our contract with New England Municipal Consultants, and they provide our real estate fieldwork, and they do the value changes. We renewed our contract this year with Patriot Properties, and they provide field and valuation updates for the personal property accounts, which is the businesses, and all the personal properties that those businesses hold. The new contract is level funded over 3 years, and it's for FY '24, '25, and '26. And they did increase their contract to $12,000 in total, so it only goes up a little bit each year. It's not a crazy increase, but it did increase a little bit. Last year, we had also budgeted that additional $7,500 for the 504, the industrial appraisals that the DOR was kind of forcing on everybody. And once again, the DOR kind of stepped back from those unless you were in a certification year, which we are not until 2025. But because it's been unpredictable, I would like to ask to just encumber that 7,500 once again to the budget moving forward, just in case it does happen. I do not want to be short that money, because it would be something that we would need to be approved by the DOR for our value. So it's an important, even though, you know, it hasn't been used for the past 2 years, they have said they were going to force us to do it, and then they've stepped back on it. So I just don't know how next year is going to go, so I would like to be prepared for that. And I think that's it with the budget. Everything's level funded except for the 2% increase in the assessing manager's salary. And I kept everything else the same.
If we had sufficient funds to leave the place marker of the 7,500 for the personal property appraisals, that would be in that line just for that purpose?
Yes.
You wouldn't reallocate it to other potential needs in the department? It would be for that, and if they didn't need it, then it would be turned back?
Exactly.
That's how you would envision that?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more of just if, instead of giving it back, and can it just be encumbered to next year? Just keep it in the budget instead of giving it back and giving it back? You know, can we just encumber it into?
A turn back is when, if it doesn't get spent, it just goes back into the general fund, the rest of the general fund for other, maybe snow and ice overages or something like that.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that it's not able to be in the following year's budget.
Okay, yes, I think it's safe to keep it where it is, yeah.
That would
And
be
I
the
know that
plan.
it's not a great look to keep asking for it and not using it, but it's completely out of my control. It's the Department of Revenue, it's their call, so I'm kind of at their mercy when it comes to that little bit of money there. And it is a contracted amount, so it's not like they, you know, and it's in the contract again for that same price. But other than that, like I said, everything's
Oh, my gosh.
the same.
I think the only question I really have, because everything is truly so straightforward. Last year and this year, you noted that your goals and mission statement haven't changed. I was not a part of the budget like the year before, so I don't have a budget book. I just think it's really nice for new people to see what your goals and your mission statement are, because I don't have that. So I've never seen it. So I don't know what your
Okay.
goals are. I don't know what your mission statement is.
So,
Yeah.
I can kind of, I mean, the mission statement of any assessor's office is to tax fair and equitably,
Sure.
and make sure that it's being done, evenly, fairly. So that's always the mission statement of an assessor's office. Goals, my goal since I've been here, because I started during the pandemic, the building was closed to the public for almost a year. I really didn't get a chance to form relationships with the residents, and because I'm not from town, that was kind of a struggle. You know, I spoke to people on the phone, but it's really never the same when you know, because a lot of people, the elderly especially, will come into my office and they depend on me for help filling out their forms or for questions about deeds, if they're planning on selling, just stuff like that. And so that's been a goal for the past 2 years, to continue to build relationships with the residents, and build relationships with my coworkers, because we all have kind of started together as new employees, a bunch of us. I'm lucky enough to work with a great financial team. Michelle and Ellen and Rebecca is always, you know, there to support, but we've kind of learned and grown together. And I think we do a pretty good job of, you know, making sure that things get done, and it's been nice the past 3 years, yeah. So that's a personal goal of mine. Goals of the office, yeah, the obvious, to continue to, you know, build the relationships with the public, make sure that they feel welcome, make sure that they know that we're there for questions, even if it's something personal, like I said, with a deed or a transfer, or putting their house in a trust, and we kind of help advise with that stuff. So, you know, that's, I mean, I think my goals are more focused on residents and making sure that they know that,
Yeah.
you know, we're there to help them with stuff that can be kind of tricky for them.
Sure. Thank you, though. I appreciate it a
welcome.
lot.
Do you have many residents come in seeking abatements, or?
So, this year, we've only had about 4 applicants for abatements. We usually don't have a huge number of abatements filed. We do, however, have a lot of exemptions, veterans exemptions, elderly, we have some blind exemptions, and those are something that people do have to apply for every year. So they do have to come in and fill out the documentation, and it's somewhat frustrating because they'll say, you know, nothing's changed, and so we have to go through the whole process of why we have to do it every year. But you do get to know those people. So, yeah, that, and then excise abatements, those are, we do get, our new billing file just came in, so those excise bills should be going out within the next month and a half. After that file goes out and the bills go out, that's when we have an influx of, you know, people that have sold their vehicles and they need help with that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of a, March is a little bit of a busy time with the abatements on excise. Yeah.
I was just trying to look up, and I didn't find it quickly enough, so on the news this morning, did you see that a town in Massachusetts, and I couldn't remember which town, there is a big uproar over their appraiser's office because,
Lunenburg,
I just looked up Lunenburg, I thought so, it didn't come up, it was Lunenburg?
yeah, I saw that this morning.
They appraised the homes that are all sort of lakefront, that is to recent sales, and so there's a lot of residents whose homes suddenly have tripled in
Yes.
value.
Quadrupled.
Yeah.
And their taxes have tripled or quadrupled in the
Yeah.
last.
I think what happens with that is a lot of times you don't have enough sales of one particular house style to have a value jump like that. So specifically condos, we hadn't had a lot of condo sales until last year. So that kind of rose the value of, and a lot of people were kind of sticker shock by the value increase, but we had the sales to back it up, and that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that the values do increase based on sales. So when a specific type of house, whether it be waterfront condos or, you know, multifamilies, when you have enough sales to make a value jump like that, and a lot of times those values sit stable for 4 or 5 years, and then all of a sudden, everybody wants condos, so now the values of condos go up, and people are like, you know, but that's how the whole process works, so, yeah,
That was a controversy,
yeah.
so.
I just have one question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you said. For Patriot Properties, the new contract is 3 years for 24, 25, 26.
Correct.
The total has increased for those 3 years by 12,000?
No, the contract is 12,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because it says it has increased 12,000. And we don't have any
Oh,
increase
it has
in
increased, it increased 12,000 in total, so it's
4,000 a year.
4,000, yes, 4,000 per year.
Okay.
So the total increase is 12.
But if we already had a contract, was it 4,000 a year, and we've kept it at?
No, the total, whatever the total contract is on here for Patriot, minus the 12, it was last year. Where is it?
Is it the revaluation maintenance?
No, that, well, it is, but that's included. Those are two different, that's New England Municipal and Patriot combined. I could grab the contracts if you want to see the exact.
I just want to make sure we
Amount.
have any increase that we're expecting covered
Yes,
in the budget.
Yes.
Because if we're level funding everything, but we're saying there's an increase in the contract,
I know that.
I just want to
think
make
that-
sure
so
we're
I'm-
using the right numbers.
Yeah, I went over it a bunch of times. It's definitely right. I think we had excess for some reason in the reval maintenance line. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I can double check that, but
Yeah, if you can maybe just
Yeah.
send over like the details
Yes,
to
I can-
Rebecca,
yep.
and she can distribute it out, just so we make sure.
yeah, I think you have a copy of that contract too, so,
Yeah, I just remembered when you mentioned it that we need to get that signed.
yeah. Oh,
On the list.
But you're right, if it's increasing in,
$4,000
If it's
a year,
increasing $4,000.
then something else must have decreased
Decreased.
4,000.
I just want to make sure we're,
In order for it to be level.
right. So I just want to make sure we have the the
Or
right
do we need to
numbers.
increase?
Yeah, so it would only be a $4,000 increase this year, not 12. So, but I know what you're saying, where did that $4,000
Yeah,
go?
like if we
go?
had
I- yeah.
4,000
Yep.
extra that we're not gonna have going forward, is
I-
that how we
I
level fund?
understand, no, I will definitely double check the contract, but I'm pretty sure that it was absorbed in a different way. I think the reval maintenance had excess in it from last year. I'm pretty sure. I have to check.
Okay, that's fine.
So once you check it again.
Yeah.
So just make sure that both
Well,
of
because the
these columns
2021
are.
The 2021 actual was 36,800. I know that's 2021, I know that's, I just thought it was, so there maybe that's where the 4,000 kind of came from. I mean, it's only 32, but
We should follow up on that.
I just don't want a surprise
Yeah.
Yeah.
later in
and if we have
This-
to
the
increase
year.
it, then we increase it.
Software and licenses, that's a yearly cost?
Yes, that's Patriots software.
Yeah.
Patriot software, they take care of the server, it's in-house, but they have access to it, so if there's any issues, they maintain it that way. And any software updates, but it's just the licensing for the software that we have here, that's their annual amount that they charge.
Or you don't have to buy a license per user?
No, I think I'm the only one with an active, like, user's license. We have other databases that are not live, but they're accessible, and I don't think, you don't need a license for that. I think the only license is my office, we only have one. We don't want anyone manipulating the software by accident, so we don't have any other active databases.
Good. Great. Anyone have any other questions for Julie? No? You're all set? Questions for us? You good? Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks for
Have a
coming.
nice night.
We should just make it back to Peabody by 7.
Traffic should be light.
So I'll try to just run quickly through these other items that were on the agenda. The first one was since that was our last budget review meeting, department meeting, the Pentucket invited us to a secondary meeting on the 24th. And that is, again, to review the education budget expectations. I don't know if Sarah or Rebecca, you have any other information about that, besides the fact that it's going to be at Pentucket on the 24th at, I sent out an email to everybody. I don't remember the time, 6:30 or 7?
It is 6 PM.
6 PM.
And it's going to be in the atrium, so right outside the
Auditorium.
auditorium. And they have asked whether or not I could provide a head count of members from the finance board as well as members from the board of selectmen who are willing to attend.
So the 24th, that's on Tuesday.
Mhm.
Who in this room may be?
I will be there.
I'll go.
Do you think that you'll go, or you'll get I mean, either way,
I
you
would
can.
love to go.
We would love for you to
Okay,
go
then
to-
it sounds like I'm posting a meeting.
Yeah. And that's fantastic, because I know they also want to talk about the regional agreement while we're there.
Okay. So I'll post, since there's going to be likely a quorum of this group. And I will make every effort. I will make every effort to get there. And that is going to be, again, just to proactively discuss the budget, this education budget, the concerns with it. And I think it's great that there are members of this group that go, because really them putting this meeting out there and inviting us to attend is what we asked for last year, as opposed to last year when there was a large budget number that we were sort of chasing in circles around, which really created struggle for the budget process all around. So that will be good. The last meeting that we had at the school was, I think, also informative and helpful, so. And it's an open meeting. Anybody from the public that would like to attend as well is more than welcome to, but that is on Tuesday, the 24th at 6 p.m. at the beautiful new middle high school. The second item that I wanted to quickly touch on is the MMA webinar, the First Amendment audit webinar. I did watch the replay of it, but Sarah, if you want to talk about it a little bit, about, first maybe touch on what the First Amendment audit is, and then
Goodness.
talk
Well,
quickly
that's a
about
lot to ask. No, I'm just
webinar.
Well, the First Amendment auditors did make a visit to the town of Groveland. They come in, make sure that the public is kind of doing everything they should be when there are public meetings, that people are allowed to come into public meetings. They're allowed to come into offices. I mean, certain spaces they're not, just things like that. They film everything. It can be quite uncomfortable, but just learning how to handle it in a respectable manner and, just kind of not elevate the situation, how to kind of diffuse it if it gets to that point. I thought it was really informative. I had never heard about this until it happened in Groveland, so I feel like I learned a ton. I would recommend it to anyone that's on a board, committee, employee, in a municipality to watch it. I just was kind of, KP Law is the one that put it on, who is an attorney that we've obviously worked with heavily. But yeah, I learned a lot.
I would also say that it's not an audit. It's not an official audit. It's not
Feels
a
like
legal
it.
audit. They are some private citizens
Yeah.
who put forth what they call a First Amendment audit. And what they're doing is visiting town halls and other public buildings to make sure that their First Amendment rights are honored. And so they put themselves into situations and make sure that they have access to public spaces and stuff like that. But they do kind of come in abruptly and ask you a lot of questions, and they have got a camera, which then they're going to post on YouTube. And so it can be a little bit uncomfortable. If it is really helpful to know who they are, know what they're about, and know what they're looking for. And to just, stay calm and answer their questions. And, yeah.
So I'll forward it to everybody, because if you have time, listen to
And-
your car on your drive to work.
Well, the other thing that we learned is that even though we are advisors and we are appointed to this board, it does make us, is employee actually the correct word? Employees of the town. And so we do fall under that umbrella. And if they came in right now and asked if they could come into this space and if we work for the town, the answer is yes, we do. So, that meeting minutes, I sent out the minutes. I sent them kind of late last night. I don't know if you got a chance to review. If not, we can table it to the next
No,
meeting. But the only people that really
I can
can
vote.
vote on the minutes are you and Sarah, and me, because we were there. Alex was not at that meeting, nor was Melissa, so,
Bill, do you want to table it, or
do you want to table it, or do you want to skip
Yeah, I
them?
moved to table the minutes meeting
I'll second that.
Okay, so that would be
to next meeting
Yes.
the minutes from
of,
November?
the minutes from December 21.
No,
November.
Was the meeting before that?
yeah,
Meeting from November 16, 2022.
November 16th, that's right.
Perfect.
That's why I take notes.
And I have them right here, so if you wanted to, I could have, so, motion to table, and
I seconded
you
it.
seconded that, so all in favor of tabling those? Okay,
Aye.
so that's unanimous, we'll cover that next time.
Perfect.
Any other town administrator updates, Rebecca?
So we should be receiving the wage classification analysis next week. So I am anticipating speaking with the Collins Center, getting an update from them, and getting that report. Once I receive that report, I will be sharing it with this board, the Board of Selectmen, as well as all of the employees. I know that everyone is very eager to see what the results are of that specific study. As we discussed previously, obviously, the study wasn't done in order to guarantee any changes in terms of salary, but to adequately reflect what is necessary and where our priorities should lie, and allow the board to make those educated decisions to make sure that it's in the best interest of the community, given the financial revenues that we have in place to support such. On that matter as well, one of the things that's missing from your budget book is the overall snapshot with the revenue numbers as well as the budgets as we list them out in the columns with the former fiscal years and what is proposed, and kind of some resemblance of a balanced budget to work with. And one of the reasons that I don't have that for you is because the numbers do not look great. I'm having a real hard time. The revenue projections for fiscal year '24, they do not look good. Just to give you an idea in terms of general new growth numbers, I mean, FY '23, we brought in 133,623. That's low. That's lower than our 204 the prior fiscal year. So we are anticipating there to be a slight bump in new growth based upon a larger development that we have. There's a subdivision up on King Street that's being constructed, so when they pull building permits for those will count towards new growth, as well as a larger development over on Salem Street that will also contribute to new growth. However, that being said, when you come from a number of 133, you kind of want to be fair when you're looking at an estimate, and you can't really bump up that much. What happens to building supplies? I know that with some of our other construction projects, we're in a lull. People, us included, we ordered a swap loader for the highway. We ordered it back in 2021. We have the money. We're ready to give them the money. Just, we'll send you the check, but they can't give us the equipment. So prices have increased, and it's been very hard to move forward with construction projects. So how that impacts us from a revenue standpoint is very important. So those numbers are low, plus just the applications that we have, some of the local receipts that we're anticipating. We budgeted 1 million, 1.1 million for motor vehicle excise for FY '23. We're not looking to take that in this fiscal year. We just got one of our largest commitments, and we're probably looking at close to $1 million. Therefore, with the way the market's going and the way people are purchasing cars, it really isn't financially best practice to anticipate that to go up beyond the million. So that, estimate comes down to about $980,000. Then we're looking at other planning board applications, other zoning board applications, just application fees in general, and those have all dropped. Not many people are looking to file. Hopefully, maybe we're wrong, and there's some, applications that come through, but even then, so you're really not talking about a substantial amount of money. When we talk about applications, I mean, you're really talking about maybe $2,000 tops. One of the biggest, largest jumps that we're seeing in terms of our revenue forecast is licenses and permits, and that comes from the building permit that we anticipate to be pulled for the development over on Salem Street. That project is about to get started and underway, and we at least anticipate 1 to 2 building permits based upon the scale of the development. There could be another one, but again, we didn't want to be ambitious in terms of what type of revenue that would bring in. So what we had adopted for fiscal year '23 was 140. What we're projecting, and we're again cautious with our estimate, we're looking at about 165. So overall, I'm very concerned about the money that we have coming in supporting all of the requests. When I take an initial look at what the departments had requested through their ClearGov, what they requested, what they put forward, I'm looking at a deficit of $201,283, and that does not consider any additional monies being assessed under the Pentucket. That's with the 3% over our last. I've been struggling to get Essex Tech to give me a concrete number, as well as Whittier. Whittier's been a little bit more responsive. They're looking at a decrease in the amount of students they have. That will result in a decrease for our assessment, but they're still telling me to be safe and to level fund. So there's no added revenue that I can take from a decrease and, feel comfortable knowing that we're not going to be underfunded for the year. So all of those taken into consideration with rising costs for insurance. We had a new appraisal for our property and casualty insurance for some of our properties. So some of our properties appraised higher, great. At the same time, that means premium went up. So there's that. We also have our fleet inventory. We have, it was great with the American Rescue Funds to get those additional vehicles so we don't have to spend the money on on maintenance, but Now we have to insure those vehicles, and that insurance cost is an additional cost. We also have our trail insurance, we also have workers' comp insurance, and all of that has gone up. And that doesn't include your health insurance. So health insurance, we're estimating about a 6% increase over last year. Trash, we're looking at an 11% increase from the last fiscal year. That's based upon the contractual obligations that we have from the contract, which is an annual flat fee that has increased. Additional is the rate for the tonnage that we have. So couple that with what we're seeing in terms of our invoices, about 2,300 tons of trash, and we're getting our estimate, and that also needs to be separated out in terms of our recycling and what we're estimating for that for each month. So it's not exactly like we're adding too much of a cushion there. If anything, trying to estimate the amount of trash is very difficult because, even if we are with the 2-barrel limit and we are making progress there, it's coming up in the recycling. So the cost is still there. We are getting slight revenue from the Waste Zero bags, but it's very minimal in nature in terms of what we're looking to support the actual trash and recycling budget. So unfortunately, with all of those added expenses, and when we hear from the fire chief, they're proposing to add the firefighters that we had on a grant full-time on our budget. This is a slight transition because it's gone on the federal schedule, which is a calendar year, not a fiscal year. So we only have to pay for January until July of the following fiscal year. So that is a nice transition for whatever you can consider nice to be in this climate. But that's an additional, I think it's $56,000 that we are putting into the budget. So all of those make it very challenging when we're looking at the revenue numbers and then looking at what's been requested. As the departments had mentioned, we did have that conversation with the departments originally, had them come in, have a conversation. What is it that they're foreseeing with the upcoming fiscal year? And they were all great conversations, and I really think that they were productive on many levels, as you'll see in my cover letter, as I explained. So we were able to come up with a team budget, but even when I look at the team budget and look at that in comparison with our numbers, we're still in a deficit of about $160,000. I am working at another proposal scenario to share as well, to try and limit that down and showing exactly where that is, just to see exactly how far off a balanced budget is, because I think it's really important for the committee to understand that an override is being discussed on the education side of things, but from an operational side of things, we need to figure out what we're doing here and what the board would like to put forward, as well as the Board of Selectmen, because the numbers are just, they're no longer working, and there's a rising cost to do business. And it's just a very, very complicated conversation, but one that I think that we need to start thinking about, especially as we start talking to the departments, because once the wage classification study comes out as well, there's a lot of expectation, and we knew there'd be a lot of expectations, and everyone said that we shouldn't move forward with it, we're gonna shoot ourselves in the foot, employees are gonna be mad, but West Newbury just did theirs, Merrimack did theirs. It's not uncommon for communities to start taking a more professional approach. So I don't think that, that's necessarily a fair argument, but we all know that that's gonna come up. So I want the board to be aware that the numbers, at least from what I'm seeing, are not ideal, and I would like to have an opportunity to look at them a little bit closer this week and then share with all of you for you to take a more thorough review and take a look and let me know if you have any specific concerns or would like me to research something additionally. And we'll continue to work on our end to see if there's any way to find additional revenues or to, see if there's any other creative solutions that we can use in order to try and alleviate some of the burden on the town side of things. Comments? You want me to comment?
Thank you, that was.
Bill's giving me a look, and I'm a little scared, I'm not gonna lie.
I get it.
Yeah.
I've been the one saying for years, I understand some people feel they're underpaid, hopefully not underappreciated, because they all are. But the simple fact is, Groveland doesn't make cheeseburgers. We can't just go out and raise the price of our cheeseburgers and pass that on to our customers, the taxpayers. That's not how it works. We have, by law, to stay within a certain percentage increase over the year before. It's not realistic in anyone's expectations, in my belief, to think that these potential enormous pay increases are not going to come with severe unintended consequences, such as dramatic cuts in your services, to offset that.
Can I just,
Sure.
I don't think that we're talking about potential enormous pay increases. I think that we're talking about reasonable pay increases that might be more in line with some comparable communities. I think that that's one part of the conversation. There's a lot of moving parts of the conversation, but there's a lot of, I think that the biggest issue with the budget is clearly the education budget is the biggest issue. And then there's other really large items. There's the insurance numbers, there's the numbers. And sure, salaries, compensation, which also connects to the Essex County Retirement, am I saying that right, Board? You know, all of those numbers combine, and they're out of, they're putting enormous pressure beyond the 2.5% tax levy. But I don't want to be, your personal comment is your personal comment. I don't want a comment coming from the finance board that we're talking about, you know, enormous pay increases, that's all. I think that they're all reasonable, I do.
And
I would
2%
agree
only
with
gets you so far for so long.
But
2% gets you so far. for so
I
long.
get it, and you talked on education. Education is definitely the elephant in this room. But this will be my 11th year in working with capital budget and things. There isn't a lot of fat in this budget.
There is no fat in this
No,
budget.
never.
So if you increase it by a penny here, you've got to decrease it by a penny somewhere else. So I'm just trying to temper expectations.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reality of the situation is, we have this much.
Yeah.
We can't increase the price of what we produce because we don't produce anything. We produce services for the taxpayer and the citizens. So it's very difficult to make, to go beyond those without asking the taxpayers for an override, which we know how those go. They don't go very well.
Well, and I think that's also a conversation. I think that it's education. I think that if we've gotten to the point where we really are at a crossroads, then I think it just very matter-of-factly comes down to information and considerations and decisions. And I think that I know that this town hasn't been in favor of overrides, except for the school building, not an operational override. And that's okay. We need to, put into place what the taxpayers tell us with their funds. And so if we ask, I think that if it might be to the point that we need information on member communities and comparable communities and their history of operational overrides, if they have or have not, and where that puts us in line with services that we can offer. And if we are at a point that we don't have the resources without an operational override, okay, that's where we are. let the taxpayers, the residents, the voters speak, and then we need to make decisions within that forum. And so what are those decisions? What are those options? What are we able to maintain and provide for services with the resources that we have?
With basically 35.3 cents on every dollar collected in revenue to use to fund all the operations in Groveland, because the rest of that 64 point something percent, strictly that elephant in the room goes to education.
And the fear is if you pass an operational override, but Groveland fails an educational override in 2 out of 3, the money that we just put forward for an operational is going to go to the education anyways. It's gonna take it from us, because we're gonna have to pay that.
Correct?
So, if
That's why the biggest thing is it's
we
a
don't get
struggle.
both.
It's just a struggle because like Bill said, the numbers are so small. So like, if you have an expense line item with $3,000, okay, you cut it by 1,000, you're eliminating the ability of that department to operate, which is just a measly $1,000. I know it sounds ridiculous, but then you take it, all right, well, now I still have $58,000 that I can't account for. The line items are so small that they don't necessarily amount to anything, and then it just becomes like, kind of like what we did last year, where there was a lot of concern, is that we're pinching pennies. So I think it's just important to recognize that last year was challenging, and this year is even more challenging, given the fact that the revenue numbers are not showing to be as high as we.
Which is crazy when the state is rolling in dough. They had to give money back. They have more money than ever, and municipalities can't make ends meet.
Thank you for mentioning that. An employee of mine brought to my attention that my company was on the Find Mass Money. And then when I looked, guess who's on Find Mass Money? The town of Groveland. So I don't know I
Hopefully it's
can't look
$20
into
million,
it. But
it might be 16.
actually, I got to give credit to my wife because she found it. She was looking, because I piqued her interest, and she said, hey, you got to tell Rebecca that town of Groveland is on here, but it doesn't say how much, because the person that has to fill out the application, then they get the email that says how much from who. So I don't know, it could be $10.
All
It could
right.
be 10 million. But
Never know.
if you don't,
We'll
I'm
take a
gonna
look.
hope for 10 million.
Go on.
And
We'll take a look. Well, we have abandoned property that we need to figure out what we're doing moving forward in terms of a warrant article for some of our other projects that we have monies on the books. So I've already been contacting legal counsel about how we go about that, so I can certainly inquire, because it is timely.
Perfect.
you never know.
You never know.
So I think we should have more information about an operational override. I think we should know what comparable communities have done, when and how much, and if we need to ask the question, then we need to ask the question. And nobody wants to see their taxes go up, but if this is the equation that we live in, then it is what it is.
But it's also something to take into consideration, because if the school comes up for an override, the school has an override in terms of their assessment, and then you're also looking at an operational override. Now, what happens if one of those overrides fails? Where does the money go? If it was an operational override that was successful, then it's still gonna be, the money's gonna have to be taken from the operational side and given to the school. So, I think we're in a really unique position, whereas before it was just solely the school, and we could make it happen. Not without, you know, feeling the cuts and feeling what we had to do for last year's budget, but I just think I agree with you, and I will definitely do the research. I just want to be realistic about the conversation, and I don't want to cloud it by saying it's us versus them, and I don't want to go down that road, but I just want to be honest about what I'm seeing and why I can't sleep at night, so.
Yeah, you know, I feel that Proposition 2.5 wasn't really put into place with the expectation that communities would live within a 2.5% annual increase. I think it was put into place with the expectation that there would be a conversation about taxes being raised beyond 2.5%. And that clearly 2.5%
Isn't enough.
isn't gonna cut it forever.
In some years, it's far short
Well,
of what needed. In other years, it's
Yeah.
adequate.
I mean, I think that it also should be noted that this town hall has done a really good job running very lean and bringing great services to the town. And you heard the police chief tonight talking about all of the wonderful programs that they have. And, you know, I think that our planning has been really great. I think that we've had, bringing back, you know, community events to the town. I think that there's been a lot of great, it's a really nice place to live and raise your family. It is. And we've done it, and you've done it. I haven't done it. The town has done it and gotten by. But I think that the numbers are telling us that we're at a point that we just need to ask a question, and that's okay. That's my feeling.
I agree. That's why you don't spend money crazy on, you know, crazy stipends and things like that, that just go on endlessly without any justification, you know, because it's money you can use down the road. Once it leaves the building, it's come bye-bye, never get it back.
So we'll follow up on that.
So we got a lot of work to do, is what you're saying, Rebecca.
Yes.
We're
And
gonna
I'll
be here
post for
late
the
night
23rd.
sharpening pencils, huh?
Oh, yes, indeed.
I know what that's like.
Thank you for the budget book.
Yes, and again, I will get you that final worksheet to add with all those
I think
numbers
that's
on.
fine. I think that the purpose of this meeting was to begin the department interviews and to space them out and to make good use of everybody's time. And then we're not going to look at the whole picture yet anyway, so I think you take the time that you need to get accurate information.
And I know, because you're brilliant, and that's
7
not
o'clock on the
sarcastic.
nose.
You're very, very talented and very, very bright. So I imagine this has already crossed your mind about standardizing office equipment around so that the paper toner costs are, you've already thought of that, haven't you?
It's already in the other room. We got cabinets galore. You're welcome to take a look. I didn't know we had as many staplers or paper clips. I mean, we're set for paper clips for like at least 20 years.
Yeah, okay. Have we thought about going completely paperless, like most of the rest of society, and keeping these things electronic?
We're
so that-
We're trying to work with what the state guidelines and record retention and what we do need to have on paper and what we can have electronically. So we are working in that direction, 100% agree. We want to look at using OneDrive and getting all the documents online so that we can, you know, eliminate as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. And one more
On
thing.
this Data retention and backup
And that's
recovery,
why you'll see the
And-
technology budget,
and that's not,
and that's not cheap with the hosting fees, 100%.
Yeah. The vehicle that the Chief Gillen has, is it repairable, and what, does he know if it's repairable and what cost? And I'm only thinking that because, and it slips my mind, Annie sounds like she could use a vehicle when she's in town to get around to these spots. Would that be a suitable vehicle, and could it be repaired at a reasonable cost that she could use that? She comes here, hops in that car when she has to take off, and that's probably, you know, during inclement weather, probably a better vehicle to be in. Is that possibility?
We can definitely explore that. Like the chief had mentioned, one of the older cruisers is now being repurposed and being used for the highway superintendent when he's in and around town. And they have had to invest, unfortunately, monies into getting that vehicle up to par. But I can definitely talk to the chief, and I know that we can consult on Rennie and his crew and Billy Green and see whether or not they think that it's something worthwhile. But it would be a good idea for sure.
Yeah, if it's not cost prohibitive, I mean, if it is, I mean, that's, you don't throw good money after bad.
Make sense?
Good. Our next meeting is February 8th, 5 o'clock, aside from the school meeting on the 20th.
February 1st.
February 1st.
Really?
Yeah.
Did we
We
change it?
have 2 in February.
That's right. You're the one that put it up there, wasn't you?
February 1st and February 15th.
No?
I have February 8th, March 1st, and March 15th.
I have February 1st, February 15th.
March
What I got.
1st and March 8th.
I have the schedule in the budget book too that you provided me.
Huh. Well, this is why we confirm it in the meeting, I guess. Isn't that interesting?
Did you prefer the 8th over the 1st?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to make sure I have the right copy. I must have pulled up a, I don't know. All right, February
I
1st.
think we had to move them around
Next
because
meeting.
we needed to be done by the 8th.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. You know what happened to the last person in this room?
So I might have attached an updated one last week with the agenda, which might be wrong, so
Okay.
I'll find that one. Okay. Anything else? Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I
since it's
have
been-
an
Oh, sorry.
item not reasonably
Oh,
anticipated.
sorry. Yes.
I'm gonna steal Rebecca's thunder, but Susan Yasko has talked to Rebecca and would be happy to join the finance board as an alternate if we needed her to.
Really?
Our friend Susan.
That would be
I
lovely.
think it would be lovely. So,
Great.
okay. Do you want to reach out to her? You want me to reach out to her?
If you'd like to, sure.
Sure.
If you'd like me to, I'm happy to.
Okay.
Big meeting on the 30th, huh? Public meeting,
Public meeting, yep.
Public hearing? Yeah.
public hearing?
Mhm.
Big public.
Oh, for the Board of Selectmen public meeting, hearing for the, yes, you're correct. It's, for the mail-in, voting. That's at, 6:30, January 30th, here in this room.
We're gonna
You all
have
show up,
chairs.
you hear? Everybody come, pack the room.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:09 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
All right,
Thank you.
I gotta bring you back my old books.